Hi, I'm David Davis from ActualTech Media, and I'm excited to be joined by our special guest, Mr. James Winebrenner, who is the CEO of Elisity. James, it's great to have you on another Spotlight Series event. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, David.
So, security is a hot topic today. I mean, companies are being breached, it seems like, right and left. We see it in the news. It seems like every day, unfortunately. And so I guess my first question I want to ask you simply is just what do you see that's broken in the world of enterprise security today?
You're right. It seems like every day we turn around and see, another the direct attack, supply chain attack, ransomware, et cetera. And I think that for all of the things that we've gotten right as an industry over the last 20 years, the challenge is as we see more focus on digital transformation and enterprises literally running their business on top of this critical technology infrastructure. All of the work that's done to secure assets is great, but all it takes is exploiting the weakest link in the chain, and that's certainly what we've seen. With a number of the ransomware attacks, some of the critical infrastructure attacks that we've seen, things like Colonial Pipeline, et cetera, where the issue is not kind of the corporate owned laptops or desktops. It's operational technology or IoT that ends up becoming becomes the attack vector. And again, as more companies are dependent upon this infrastructure, the risk of having that not be available due to ransomware or another attack is that much greater.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a scary time in IT for anyone responsible for securing the enterprise and protecting data. I mean, one of the buzzwords, one of the hot topics in the industry today is this idea of zero trust. So is Elisity producing or offering a zero trust security product?
So, it's funny. I think that zero trust is sort of the marketing term du jour. So everybody has sort of jumped on the bandwagon, and zero trust is not something new, but it's not a product really by any stretch. It's really a design philosophy and an architecture that actually encompasses a lot of different elements of an organization's infrastructure. But it fundamentally gets back to changing the trust model from the way we've built networks and applications for decades was around assuming an implicit level of trust, really kind of based upon where users and assets were, right? So if I was inside of the corporate firewall, I could access pretty much anything else that was inside of the corporate firewall, and I was implicitly trusted. And the idea of zero trust is I don't want to trust anything, a user or a device, an application, simply based upon its location. There's a lot of other context that we want to understand about that user, or that device, or that application before we establish the trust relationship. So it really is kind of a journey that organizations are going on from an implicit trust or a location-based trust model towards more of a zero trust model. And certainly there are tools that can help with that journey, but it's absolutely not simply buy this and check the box and you're off to the races.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think, like you said, that's kind of a misnomer today in the world of security, that zero trust is something that can just be installed, if you will. So let's talk now a little bit more about specifically the Elisity cognitive trust product that you all offer. Can you tell us a little bit more about the architecture and exactly how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, our approach is essentially saying, look, enterprises need to not trust any of their underlying networks. So it's easy for us to think about, the remote worker that's working from home via their Comcast broadband, or maybe sitting in a Starbucks, and say, of course, we're not going to trust those networks. But that worker may come back into an office in a hybrid work situation. And traditionally, that on-prem network, that enterprise network was trusted. But as we look at, really, again, sort of the distribution of workers around in what is probably going to be a hybrid work scenario for the foreseeable future, at least, and perhaps forever, and the distribution of assets. And when we talk about assets, that's things like applications and data and then devices. those are distributed across really a large number of what we think of as underlay networks, right? A lot of that now is actually distributed into various infrastructure as a service, cloud providers, AWS, Azure, GCP. Certainly, a lot of that data is being distributed into SaaS applications that would have traditionally been hosted on-prem. But that doesn't mean that we don't have anything running in the enterprise environment. And certainly, we're working with a number of healthcare organizations that have, a significant number of medical device assets that are still running on the corporate network. Certainly in manufacturing and other critical infrastructure applications where we literally are, running a critical infrastructure, running a production floor on networks that were traditionally air-gapped. But now we want to be able to get data from that into the cloud to be able to do advanced analytics and things of that nature. So it's really changing the nature of what we think of as sort of the kind of the trusted versus untrusted network. Elicity's goal is to say, I don't want to trust any of those underlays, but I want to build a framework that allows me to understand the identity and the context of all of my enterprise assets. So users, applications, devices, and data. And then based on that identity and that context information, allow us to securely connect across any number of underlay networks, and to do so in a way that embraces this concept of least privilege. So I can very easily build a policy that says, James should have access to these applications based upon where he is. And I can't see other devices or other data that's on the network that I don't have a need to see, and to be able to build and manage that policy across all of our enterprise assets.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that principle of least privilege that's just all too often forgotten, I think, in the world of security. So we need to really apply that. And you make great points around, how the work environment has changed. This hybrid work environment is really kind of the foreseeable future. So you mentioned healthcare, how this has really helped the healthcare vertical out. What about some other verticals where this has been successful and maybe some specific use cases?
Yes, so we're working with a number of verticals in the manufacturing sector. Everything from pharmaceutical manufacturing, which, as you can imagine, has been very sensitive area over the last 18 months. To more traditional types of manufacturing. And again, if we think about the way we're building those production networks, those production floors, everything is converging on traditional enterprise networking techniques. We're using IP and Ethernet in industrial networks now instead of some of the legacy dedicated protocols. And while that's been great in terms of being able to move faster and drive efficiency, it has opened up the attack surface. And so it's more important than ever where we're moving away from physical segmentation in some of those cases that we can deliver, again, this concept of least privilege, on that production floor, and then extend that least privilege connectivity, all the way into the cloud edge, directly into a service mesh, as an example, running in one of the cloud providers.
Absolutely, yeah. So could Elisity cognitive trust be really applicable or helpful to better secure any company that has distributed locations and distributed employees?
Yes, I think the sweet spot for us is really organizations that do have some degree of a hybrid workforce and have traditionally maybe leveraged a VPN type solution to provide secure access back into one location. That no longer really makes sense architecturally, as those users again are accessing applications and data that are more widely distributed. But typically organizations that have the need for remote and hybrid work across a number of physical locations, branches and campuses and manufacturing sites, but that also are in the process of migrating a lot of their application workloads from traditional on-prem data centers into the cloud. And the advantage that Elisity brings is being able to provide a single unified least privilege access connectivity policy across all of those asset locations, and allow it to be managed very, very simply via a cloud delivered portal, and across again any number of different underlay networks, which are more and more likely insecure.
Excellent. I mean, it sounds like this is a product that could help to really better secure so many companies out there who are dealing with security challenges. If folks are interested in trying this out for themselves, do you have a way to do that? What do you recommend?
Absolutely. So as I said, the other difference here is that we're not requiring a big forklift upgrade of a lot of infrastructure that has to be deployed on-prem. Companies that are interested in trying out the Elisity Cognitive Trust platform can actually start very, very easily. We integrate with a number of different user identity sources, so you very quickly can integrate with Azure AD and have complete visibility into all of the different user groups and begin building those least privilege access policies for access back into on-prem and cloud-hosted applications, and then make decisions on how far do we want to distribute that overlay connectivity back into additional on-premise locations, additional manufacturing floors, et cetera.
Excellent. All right. Well, it sounds like a great solution that could help out a lot of companies out there. James, thank you so much for telling us about Elisity today.
Great. It was so great to meet you, David. Thank you so much.
And if you enjoyed the Spotlight Series interview, check out others that we have on our YouTube page. Thanks a lot.